Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, Rob Dale is with us. Now, he's a meteorologist, a former broadcaster, and he's involved with emergency management agencies. And he does training and trying to make sure that the right word gets out to the public in the right way. He's got a lot of ideas about EAS and some warnings about what's coming up from the National Weather Service. That's coming up on This Week in Radio Tech. Brought to you by the Telos Alliance and IP Tablet. This one-of-a-kind software virtualizes the monitoring and control of your Fusion or IQ console, Telos Omnia Gear, and other HTML5-enabled systems. By BSW, Broadcast Supply Worldwide, where the very sporting specials are on now. Get a great deal on a sports broadcasting package and sound better than ever. And by the new Ruby console from Lavo. Intuitive, uncluttered, powerful, yet so refined, with auto-mix, smart mixing, and a context-sensitive user interface. See Lavo in your future at lavo.com/TWiRT. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. It's the show where we talk about everything from, this thing right here, the microphone, to the light bulb at the top of the tower, and all the people that help us get radio right. And there's a big effort going on to inform the public about emergencies, and that's the topic of today's show. Is the emergency alert system from a really, not from such a geeky point of view, but we've got a guest on, Rob Dale, who'll be with us in just a minute to give us he's got real world experience with this, and he kind of knows what goes wrong, what goes right, and he's working hard to make sure that emergency officials know how best to use the system and stuff like that. I'm looking forward to hearing from it. I didn't want to hear a geek fest myself. We all know about squawks and tones and duck farts and the stations we have to be tuned to and all that, and all the potential places where mistakes can be made and often are made in within the station equipment and the usually poor audio quality. I want to talk about how we what's important for informing the public and ideally how that can best happen. So Rob Dale will be with us. Chris Tobin, though, is with us right now. And by the way, I'm back in Nashville, delighted to be back home. Slept in my own bed for the first time last night. Yeah, it felt so good to be in my own sheets. Chris Tobin, what does it feel like to you to be back in your own bed after you've been on the road for a while?
Oh, it's quite a relief. Sorry, I'm in a bunker. Just doing a test, so it's Mike Papa. Anyway, no, it's yes. When I've traveled and spent much time on the road, and you come back to familiar surroundings, it is definitely a pleasure, without a doubt. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, next week I'll be up in Toronto for several days, so I'll be back on the road. Should be fun.
Will you be able to join us from Toronto, you figure?
Absolutely. I made plans to do that.
Okay, yes. Good. I've got a couple road trips coming up too. Going to Madison, Wisconsin for the Wisconsin Broadcasters Show. Yeah. And then New York for the EAS and the NAB. So in fact, I'm sure we'll have David Bialik on within the next week or two to talk about some sessions there. And then, the SBE national meeting in Denver. That'll be coming up in a few weeks. So yeah, lots coming up. We're doing more remote broadcasts. I don't seem to have the luck that you do. I don't seem to have the preparedness that you do, Chris, trying to get good bandwidth.
I really don't go out of my way to do anything. I travel my little kit, go to a location, ask what they have, figure it out, and I just go from there. I'll see what happens in Toronto because none of my cellular stuff is going to work up there since I'm on a different band.
Well, as long as I pack a ketchup bottle in my bag, I think my chances go up quite a bit.
I'm considering bringing my little Wi-Fi linking system just for fun.
I should get what you got. I should, so I can extend that. By the way, I was delighted that we were able to get on the air on the internet meaningfully from Amsterdam, because that same hotel last year had almost the world's worst internet. It was absolutely pathetic, horrible. Even at 2 a.m., it was slow. And obviously they did something to correct it because it was fantastic. We got, as far as I know, we had an HD quality video signal out of Amsterdam last week. So,
well, I think once the carriers, the telecom carriers start pushing Wi-Fi offloading for carrier Wi-Fi, I believe is what it's called. I think you're going to start seeing a more reliable broadband in public locations, or at least in hotels and sorts like that, because the carrier is going to push it.
Well, and then this is a business hotel. Business people stay there, and I'm sure that they got a lot of complaints about how bad it was because people need to do work. even if it costs extra, and that hotel it doesn't. But I just think that either poor management, poor infrastructure. A lot of these hotels, contract with some company to provide the service, and there's a lot of poor software out there just for logging in and getting on the Wi-Fi.
One of my trips to IBC in Schiphol, at the airport hotel in Schiphol, I think it's called, right?
Schiphol, yeah.
It was exactly that.
The airport.
It was exactly that. There was a third-party broadband service. It was terrible. This customer service was pathetic. Their ability to understand which hotel and their client list you were at. The fact that I logged into their portal, they couldn't see that. I'm like, guys, this is getting a little annoying. But yeah. And that was in the business center. That wasn't even in a hotel room.
Yeah, and same for this last year at the same hotel. They said, well, try the business center. And these machines were wired. And it was just as horrible there. I mean, we're talking about 40, 50, 60 kilobits per second. That was it. So
Yeah.
Get anywhere. Hey, let's jump right to our guest. Rob Dale is here, and I heard about Rob from some forum on the internet. I forget which one it was, but Rob was participating in a conversation about EAS alerts, I guess, during Hurricane Harvey. So, Rob, welcome in. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
Yeah, good to be here. And Harvey was what brought us together. My day job, I'm with what's Ingham County Homeland Security and Emergency Management. So right in the middle of Michigan, just outside of Lansing. I was a TV meteorologist for 12 years. Still do radio weather, but my passion is public alerting and notification. And there's a lot of examples of where it's gone well, and a lot where it's not so well. So that's what kind of gets me fired up into discussing the topic at least, and going from there.
We're going to be talking about public safety personnel and how they mean well, but sometimes the tools aren't always clear to them, or they haven't been trained well on how to use it. Now, Rob, I'm guessing that you've been involved in training your colleagues on how to use emergency alerting systems.
Yeah, there's really two aspects of it. It's one is the knobs and buttons, how to actually use it. The second is what sort of messages work for the public. We come from an industry where most emergency managers have some background in fire or police, and when the policeman tells you to not cross the street, you don't cross the street. Well, you can't tell people don't go outside to see a tornado, or immediately evacuate, and not tell them why. There's a lot of lessons we've learned in the communications aspect as my role as a meteorologist storyteller. So the knobology is an issue, and then composing a message that goes outside of the way most police and firefighters have been trained to talk to the public, that's an issue as well.
Knobology. There's a word I got to write down. That should be the word of the year right there. Knobology. I like that. Hey, we're going to take a quick break for our first commercial, and when we come back, Chris Tobin is more involved with the emergency procedures, being part of a lot of things, meetings in the New York City area. And so I would like it, Chris, if you would just kind of take over a lot of the conversation here. I may interject if I've got a question that's just burning a hole in my pocket or my brain. But if you and Dale would carry on the conversation when we come back from the spot, I would appreciate it. I didn't talk about that before. Is that all right with you, Chris?
That's fine. Yeah, I can run with that. No problem.
Awesome. Great. Hey, our show This Week in Radio Tech brought to you by, in part, by the Telos Alliance. And the big topic nowadays is the topic of virtual radio. And, well, first of all, what does that mean? Because it means different things to different people. And different companies have different offerings that they say represents virtual radio. And like most new technologies, it's kind of important to take to do this step by step, to take steps to get the industry comfortable with this. A lot of the point of virtual radio is to aggregate functions, different functions of different pieces of equipment into a common work area, work surface, workplace where you can get to everything. Even in the same interface, and so that you can do that perhaps remotely by virtualizing these things onto, well, typically a screen. And it can also mean that a lot of the functions that we're accustomed to don't have to be done in the traditional places that they were done before. So the Telos Alliance introduced a line of products, or we expanded on a line of products, I should say, at the IBC show this past week. And the products are largely developed by a partner company with the Telos Alliance. And that's a company called IP Studio, and they're in Paris, France. Jérôme Guéhary is the CEO there, and I've been pleased to know Jérôme for a dozen years now. And Jerome has developed this IP tablet technology that, along with the Telos Alliance, we're working very closely with him to make it marketable and usable for our customers, and to make sure that Telos Alliance equipment has the APIs and the HTML engines to serve out the appropriate graphics and functionalities. So at the Telos Alliance website, and I'll put this link in the show notes, there is a page about virtual radio and kind of where the Telos Alliance is going with this. It's people saying, hey, it's a new frontier, and in some ways it's been done for a little while. I mean, some people have been running radio stations remotely for a number of years now. Actually, in American Samoa, we were kind of remotely running a radio station 19 years ago before we hired a staff there, and we did that, with I guess with not GoToPC, but a PC Anywhere way back then. The IP tablet, though, represents a super leap forward in this. You can get the custom functionalities that you need right in front of you on a touchscreen. And it can be as small as a 7-inch tablet for what you can fit on that. It can be a 12-inch tablet. It can even be something like a 27-inch beautiful touchscreen with a matte finish on it that doesn't reflect the overhead lights like a glossy screen would. That's what we were showing at the IBC show. And it was just amazing. You had faders, and you could customize exactly how many faders you want, if you have VU meters, interface to an automation system. We were demoing a Zeta automation system there because it has an HTML5 and a server serving out exactly what you need to see. We had phone line control from a Telos VX. We had codec control built in there. We had hotkeys, hot buttons. You could change profiles, do all the things you needed to. And you know what? We had it hooked up right there in the same booth as the equipment, but it didn't have to be. The data rate to this thing was I think well under 250 kilobits per second. So now that's not including the audio, but you could add audio to that for whatever quality level that you want. Point is, you could have that tablet anywhere. Have a microphone, speakers, headphones, have some mixing right there on site, and then control equipment that's far away back at your radio studio. On this webpage, and again, I'll link to it in the show notes, Frank Foti and our COO, Scott Stiefel, had a conversation about virtual radio, especially virtualizing audio processing. So Hans von Zutphen, one of our designers of audio processors, he's developed Omnia SST. Now, he introduced it a year ago. It's now absolutely available for sale, with lots of good advice on sound cards and how to interface to your transmitter, and with an appliance for the transmitter side coming along in the not too distant future from the Telos Alliance. So virtual radio, man, it's here. The Telos Alliance is on top of it and doing some amazingly beautiful and functional things to bring it to you. I'll put the link in the show notes, and so you can go to the website, see the video, and read about what the Telos Alliance is doing with the IP tablet, Omnia SST, and some other cool things. All right. And BBC, the Vylor project, that's been on the air for, I guess, about 3 years now. And it's pretty amazing, too. In fact, I got to see it when I was in London a week before last. And it was just amazing how local stations out in the English countryside use all the facilities and the resources that are back in the London headquarters and a backup site in Manchester. Thanks a lot, Telos Alliance, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Appreciate it. All right, Chris Tobin is along with Rob Dale. And Chris and Rob, kind of take it away. I'm going to be a fly on the wall and listen up about what Rob's role is and how he makes emergency alerting better.
All right, fair enough. Let's start off with EAS, Emergency Alert System. And those of you, for a little bit of history, let's go back in time. All right, there we go. 1997, the EAS AM/FM Handbook, for those of you who may or may not remember. For those of you who do remember, I know you have a smile on your face. Those who don't remember, looking, it's like, whoa, what is this about? What was this? That's the early days. That was when you had that little envelope that was inside that book I just showed you. And this is the authenticator list. This was the list. This was it. When you got the call over the speaker of your little EAS box, it would ask you for test authenticator words, or the actual words, and they're right on here. Yes, things like Tango Charlie, Mike Papa, Lima Lima. Those are things we had to be prepared for. And that's changed considerably since then. Now we have today's emergency alert system. So those of you who are familiar with this which you should have because this is the most current one. This is ready for the national test for next week. It's the 27th of September. And just a little fun for that. So those of you with EAS and emergency alert or OEM facilities, what do you call it? The emergency centers. Here in New York City, there are various programs and initiatives that are available for citizens to check out. Notify New York City is one of them. You can find out, you get the alerts from the city's official source agencies. Basically, all the various public safety agencies will send out alerts through your phone, email, however you choose. There's also New York City severe weather. So for severe weather conditions or emergencies that you could be alerted to as well, that may affect your particular area. Now, New York City is yes, the 5 boroughs, Manhattan, Bronx, Queens, Staten Island, and Brooklyn, but also comprises the suburbs. So you have parts of northern New Jersey, you have lower Fairfield County of Connecticut, Westchester County, just above New York City, and then you have Nassau County and Long Island, which it impacts everybody. So just as we get the broad strokes for our conversation. And then there's also Ready New York. That's another service that helps you to be prepared. It gives you information on how to have a go bag prepared, what should be in the go bag, and how many days should you be prepared for it. If you live near an area that may be flooding, you may be expected to be on the go or outside of your home for maybe more than 2 or 3 days, maybe 2 weeks. Then there's also the Community Emergency Response Team groups. Those are CERTs, and those are folks who are trained and understand how to work in emergencies to, augment the local public agencies, so law enforcement, fire, ambulance, EMT, that kind of stuff. And then there's also Emergency Management Office has partners in preparedness. So there are businesses, community groups that can work with the city's Emergency Management Office, the OEM, Office of Emergency Management. So there's a lot of things going on, and Rob will be talking about the same stuff, I'm sure. So here in the New York City area, that's what we have, and it's similar, I'm sure, in many other metropolitan areas, Philadelphia, Boston, or Chicago, or even London, Madrid, or anywhere else in the world. So it's nothing new. It's tailored to the local area. So what I've just spoke about is the New York City, and what we've learned over the last many years of what to do and be prepared for the 8 million plus people that occupy this, the geography. So it's interesting. Now, emergency alert systems for broadcasters. Well, we all are familiar with that. You have the weekly tests, then you have the monthly required tests. Weekly test you generate. It's random. You put it into your traffic system, so your randomly comes up on your traffic log for the announcers or presenters or DJs to perform. And then the monthly test comes from your LP1s, and they will be that's the one you receive. You don't do anything other than receive it and then forward it within an hour for you to test it. And those are the basic systems there. And that's what we were talking about with the manual. Let me get back to this guy. This here, just a reminder. This explains everything inside, and you should have that in your studio with your operators so you can refer to it, make sure everything's in order, and in the event something goes awry, they know what to do and who to contact at the station. So with that, let's now move forward to Rob. What can you tell us from the public safety side where you're involved and do more of? How do local municipalities look at EAS? I mean, I know how the Weather Service is trying to do stuff, and they've got a task on their own, just warning people of weather conditions that can change at a moment's notice. I mean, I know tornadoes in New York City are not common, but we've had a few over the years. Funnels touch down and briefly, and people start to panic. Can you enlighten the audience, the group of viewers and listeners, where public safety fits into all this emergency alerting in general, not just EAS for broadcast?
Yeah, the local side handles basically anything that's not weather related. We're actually called NWEMs, non-weather emergency messages. So if it's weather related, tornado warnings, bad flooding, that's all handled by the Weather Service. That's all hands off, basically. Once the Weather Service issues a tornado warning, it's automatically disseminated on the weather radio. It's automatically disseminated on EAS. It's WEA, which means it's the wireless enabled alerts or emergency alerts that dings your cell phone. Almost every cell phone today has WEA capabilities, so it'll do a short message to your cell phone. So and far and away, that's probably 90% of all EAS traffic is straight from the Weather Service without any human interaction. Once the meteorologist there presses the send button. So where we deal with in the public sector, the emergency management offices, is some police and fire departments, depending on how your community is set up. They have the ability to tap into that same EAS network. Most of the time it is done through what's called their mass notification system. In the old days that was called reverse 911, but whatever they use to to push information to the public, whether it's by email or by phone call or by text message, usually EAS, or its bigger name, IPAWS, the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. We love acronyms. That's the big picture. Usually most notification systems have that IPAWS connection, and that's how we get involved when we generate messages. As you showed, the card, the manual phone call thing, theoretically that might still exist somewhere. I don't know if anyone still has that capability, though.
Oh, no. The cards I was showing was just for historical purposes. It has nothing to do with current. The current, just so we're clear, the current EAS for broadcasters is the operating handbook that you see in my hand. This is the most current one off the FCC website. I believe there's a date on the inside, one of the pages inside. Let me just make sure I have this correct. It says 2017. Yes, current as of July 24th, 2017. So this is what it is. Everything else I showed you is purely historical. It has nothing to do with valid activations of any sort that I'm aware of, unless you're literally on a part of the globe that just hasn't reached modernization yet. Other than that, we should be good. So I'm curious. What I've always fascinated with, and I do a lot of work. I've had the opportunity over the years to work with law enforcement and public safety agencies and OEM departments, New York City OEM, on many occasions. What's the training process like? How do people in that sector, the OEM sector, I'll call it, train to understand, one, they're dealing with the public, so how do you maintain calm and coolness during emergencies? I'll just call them that. I'm not going to say weather related only, but just emergencies in general that affect the public. What's the training? How do you understand what not to do or do? Because I know traveling around here in the city and in the subway especially, you're in close quarters. You've got folks that are have tempers because it's early morning. The subway is 92 degrees in the middle of the winter. It's just crazy. And then something happens. Train is delayed. There's a sick passenger. OEM is notified because of a derailment or a passenger on the roadbed. How do they train folks like that? What's the process? I mean, I'm just curious if it's, as I hear laughing, so it's probably going to be one of those. Well, believe it or not, it's common sense, and that's the most hardest thing to do.
Well, here's and as you said, there's police, there's fire, there's emergency management. There are actual college paths to being an emergency manager these days. I went back to school, did get both my bachelor's and master's, and my entire training on communicating with the public was a line in a book that said use the best practices when communicating with the public. So that was it for me. Most of it has been on my own, to be quite honest. That as a meteorologist, I learned that some things, the ways that we were talking to the public were not working. If I say 30% chance of rain, people will interpret that whatever way they want. When we yell at people and say there's a tornado warning, get under cover, they don't always get under cover, and we yell louder, kind of like those when you play those pantomime games where you just yell louder and think people will understand, and it doesn't happen. So to be honest, generic training on best practices for communication is something you probably have to do on your own. We do see some of the larger mass notification system vendors using that as webinar topics, really to kind of provide that. Here's the insight into how to communicate with the public. But again, for most people, it's they've been in the public service field for years. They didn't have any formal training. The policeman puts his hand up and you stop, and that's the end of the story. And some of the messages I've seen go across on EAS are of the we're telling you what to do, we're the authority, and do it. And maybe that worked back in the 50s and 60s when people thought of government differently, but the way government is today and just things in general, society in general, just because I put my badge on and tell you to do something doesn't automatically mean people do something. And a lot of us in this field still think, hey, I've got the badge or I've got the OEM designation, you will do what I say without asking why. That just doesn't work. And that's one of the problems with EAS. It's not two-way. It's a one-way push system. When you get those alerts on your cell phone, it's 90 characters. I can't fit a lot of 90 characters. Certainly can't fit the Y in there. So that's again a communications issue with the public.
Okay,
wow,
I agree with that.
It's less than a tweet then. I mean, it's almost half of a tweet, isn't it?
Yeah, yes. The part where you start that, everything that we do teach us in a good message, you need first to identify who you are. Second, because that gives you authority. Two is what's the problem. Three is what's your responsibility as a recipient of this message. And four, how will you get more information? Well, I can't fit any of that in 90 characters. It will be going up to 300-ish characters in the next year or two, but even then, that's a struggle to kind of provide information of that nature. So 90 characters is there's no best practices that it's going to fit much in 90 characters.
Chris, I'm sorry I interrupted what you were about to ask.
Oh, no, it's okay. No, I totally understand what you're saying. And I'm curious, since you're familiar with broadcasting and broadcasters, as a meteorologist and as a broadcaster on both sides, is it best that local stations, whether it be television or radio, should they have a better relationship or try to work with the local municipalities as far as understanding where they're coming from when they issue alerts? Say New York City or Newark.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a critical aspect of it. And for me, thankfully, coming from broadcast, I still know most of the people at the TV stations I worked with. So we really have that good relationship. Even when my old competition doesn't like having me on air, they still know I can know how to talk. So that's a big factor, because TV, they'll take my message and amplify it. Radio broadcasts will take my message and amplify it if it's manned, if it's human based. If it's one of our automated stations, obviously they're going to take exactly what I put out and send it out. But absolutely any relationship with local broadcasters and the EM, I honestly don't know many of the radio people here. I know everyone in TV, but the radio seems to change a lot, and I don't know if that's just our area or if that's the field in general. But those relationships, I honestly don't know what radio stations here would answer the phone. So those ahead of time help us, because again, you're amplifying our message, and then they help you because they provide a source for the public. I can say, hey, tune into this station. They'll have some updates for you versus, hey, this station's entirely satellite based. All they're going to do is repeat my EAS message.
Yep. Okay. That's pretty much what I expected. So now, as a meteorologist, so let's go to the weather. We're going to start with, because weather, pretty much you get up in the morning, and no matter where you're on the globe, you get up, the first thing you're going to look for is, what's your day going to be like as far as what Mother Nature does, and then everything else falls behind that. As a meteorologist, how does one, approach weather forecasting as far as pending unsettled weather events? Like today we had very nice clear skies. The weather temperatures were near 90. It was 85 degrees here in this area, 90 by where you are. It was really good. Earlier in the week, we had high winds, no rain, but just high winds. How does a meteorologist, I was curious, approach these things? Because, you're doing television, you're doing radio, and you sort of have to weigh certain things, I guess, or is there a process, or the science of meteorology is very broad, I know, because I've met many folks who do this for a living, and it's wild, the stuff you guys got to go through. How do you approach it, or how, in general, as your colleagues go with it?
Yeah, so the first thing we do is we analyze what's going on right now. So again, the wake up day is what do the weather maps say? What do I see coming from storms? What happened? Most of our weather comes from the west in the U.S. So what happened a state or two over yesterday? And from that, we put that there's computer models that are called. Sometimes you hear we talk about the Euro or the GFS. I wish we wouldn't say those terms, but some meteorologists do. But anyways, computers simulate the atmosphere. They kind of spit out what they think is going to happen. My role then, I've been forecasting in the Great Lakes for 20 years now, is to say, okay, here's the computer helped me here, but the computer's a little bit off here. For example, most computers said it would not rain at all today, and I can see black skies all around my house. So thankfully, I did throw in that chance of a thunderstorm. But that's my role then. And then I pushed that into the EM role is we're very big social media users. I never wanted to be in it. I thought that was for my kids, and that was the extent of it. But people go to social media for weather information and for disaster information. So if I think something notable might come, we're in a drought. We're officially drought today. So the first thing I did this morning was, when I got out of the office, was put a message about stay away from fires, because it's going to be a big drought pattern. So if there's something of note, then we'll kind of, if we have a chance of tornadoes later in the day, the first thing I do in the morning is push that message via our social media, telling people, hey, pay a little more attention to your TV or radio today, or to your cell phone, and because we have some severe weather happening, or most of the time we say, hey, it's going to be a nice day, go enjoy your day. But we want to make sure people are, or I do, coming to my site for information, and not with Facebook. We have a lot of people that really like weather. That doesn't qualify you, but on social media, you don't know the difference between the 14-year-old who watches the Weather Channel and versus someone who spent their life in meteorology. So even on nice days, I want to make sure people are still coming to my website.
Okay, I get that. Now, a question I have, and I've enjoyed meteorology for years, partly because of my work, because it impacts my ability to do the job. But what is the modeling, the computer modeling that's between, say, I'll call it the National Weather Service here in the States, and then the Euro model, as you pointed out earlier, that, people talk about these two things. How is it that the two are so different at times? And what was that just strictly the way the data is collected, the models are created? I'm just sheer curiosity. I'm not trying to poke any credibility issue toward either science of what's going on, but it's just I've noticed sometimes I know TV people get a little crazy when it comes to graphics, but I'm sheer curiosity because I've tried to figure it out. It just seems odd at times.
Yeah, so basically, the Europeans took a different path of computer modeling that we did. For America, a lot of our weather issues are today. We have tornadoes like they don't have over there. I'm not saying they don't have tornadoes, but with thunderstorms are a big impact to our commerce. Flash flooding is a big impact to our commerce. Snowstorms, big impact. And again, I'm not saying Europe doesn't, but we're the tornado capital of the world in the United States. So a lot of our computer modeling was really focused on that today stuff. We have computers that run and give us updates every 15 minutes for the next 36 hours. The European model doesn't do that. The European model was really intended to be a medium range forecast, like that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days out. So a lot of times what we kind of use both of them. So we'll start with the European model to give us, hey, here's the heads up, here's where things might happen. But then as it gets closer, we don't touch the European at all. When it's today's when I start my day with my forecast, I don't look at the European at all. It has no value to me in today, because it only gives me 6-hour updates. I'm getting 15-minute updates from our American models. So in a nutshell, it's just we took two different paths. Their computer is far and away one of the best when it comes to global modeling at those 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 day ranges. Our computers are the best at U.S. modeling for today.
Hey guys, we're going to take a quick pause right now in the show, and as we move along with the show, we're going to talk about some of the specifics, because this is what drew my interest to Rob is some of the complaints that went on about the alerting with Hurricane Harvey. There were some locations that received dozens, if not I don't know if 100 alerts or more because of overlapping polygons of severe weather. And boy, if you happen to live at a point that just happened to be where a lot of these polygons of warning areas overlapped, my goodness, I mean, you had to worry about keeping your family above water and staying out of electrical wires instead of all the times that your weather radio is going off. So we're going to talk about that and see what Rob has to say about that situation and if it can get any better. And also about a thing that the National Weather Service wants to do that may not be helpful to emergency alerting because it's a sliding scale. It's going to be, it's not, warning or no warning. It's a sliding scale. So we have to figure out some thresholds. Our show this week in Radio Tech is episode number 365. Chris Tobin is along in the New York City area, and Rob Dale from Lansing, Michigan, a former actually still a broadcaster, but full time he works with the emergency folks in Ingham County in Michigan. Our show is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcast Supply Worldwide. That's bswusa.com. And they've got some deals right now. It's still their very sporting specials. Hey, it's not too late. If you've tried to do a football game or two for your high school or your college and you realize, oh man, we don't have enough gear. We need some more headsets, or our headsets have some broken wires and bad foam on the ear cups. Hey, call BSW. They've got the stuff in stock and ready to ship out of their Columbus, Ohio warehouse. You can have it overnight. You can have a lot of the things that they sell. In fact, most everything they sell You can have it the next day if you need it. So you need to up your game with sports broadcasting or any remote broadcasting. Now's the time to do it. Very Sporting specials where you save up to 42% at their Very Sporting sale at BSW. For example, the powerful new Comrex Access NX. That's their revolutionary redesign of their popular Access IP codec. Has faster processors, automatic error correction, a convenient, intuitive touchscreen, and a lot more. It's now shipping. You can get a headset 3-pack deal. You get 3 Audio-Technica BPHS-1 headsets for the price of 2. You get, that's one free. These are the ones that our show uses when we're on the road, especially at the NAB show. They're just terrific headsets. They sound great, they fit great, and they pack up nicely. If you need to do guest interviews, you need to check out the new Comrex Opal IP audio gateway. Here's what you do. If you got a VIP guest, you got somebody that's maybe not real technical, but you want them to sound great on your station. Well, if you've got the Comrex Opal, you simply send them a link that you get from the Opal itself, and you send them that link, and all they have to do is open their browser and hit the link, opens their browser, and voila, they are talking and listening to your Comrex Opal IP audio gateway. And this uses the WebRTC technology. And guess what? In iOS 11, it's there. So that means that Apple iPhones work with the Opal Comrex IP audio gateway too, as soon as they're upgraded to iOS 11. More specials, including the HDV mixer. Now, this is for adding video to your sports broadcast. You can grow your audience and your revenue with the HDV Mixer Sports Video Package. It integrates video from 2 cameras, lower thirds, graphics, and more, while offering live streaming to social media. That's right. You can put your high school football, basketball game, the cheerleader tryouts, the cheerleader competition on video on your station's social media outlets. Check that out. It's just amazing the stuff that we can do nowadays, and BSW has got it. I was just talking to John Lynch today, one of the sales reps. He's been at BSW for, 15, 16, 17 years now. Great guy. They're all super nice people at BSW. Give them a call at 800-426-8434. That's 800-426-8434. Or go to the website, bswusa.com. If you order by 7 o'clock Eastern time, and if it's in their warehouse, they can ship it overnight to you if you need it, because their warehouse is just down the street from a big UPS shipping hub. Thanks a lot, bswusa.com, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right. Hey, we're here. Kirk Harnack, Chris Tobin is here, and Rob Dale. And Rob is with the Ingham County Emergency Management Agency and also a former TV weather guy. So he knows about alerting the public and what words to use. Rob, I did notice that, the weather folks on all the channels were really comparing the GFS and the European models for especially Hurricane Irma, since we were hoping it wouldn't go where it did. We were just praying that the European was right. It looked so much better. But it did. It fooled us. So Hurricane Harvey, devastating Houston and Beaumont and places all around there. What do you think went right, and what could get better about alerting the public?
Yeah, the big problem there, I did see some local emergency managers sending messages out during Harvey, really more during the recovery stage, advising people what kind of protection they need to take and how to boil water. Alerts were sent that way. The issue came as it was making landfall. One of the coastal counties had 47 tornado warnings issued while the storm was making landfall. Now, technically, the Weather Service was right to do what they do, because their radar indicated that within the hurricane were some tornadoes, and the directives, you know how government works, the directives say there's a tornado indicated on radar, you issue a tornado warning. Well, the concern is if people are already taking cover for a hurricane, does a tornado warning really help them? And every time it goes, I don't know if you've heard a WE alert on your phone, but it's loud and it wakes you up. So if you finally get those kids to sleep, and every 20 minutes you're getting a new tornado warning when you're already in shelter, that's where some of the current concerns come into play. I live in an area that will never, ever, ever flood. But if the Weather Service issues a flash flood warning for my county, I will be woken up to tell me there's a flash flood warning, day or night. The issue with the localized alerts is EAS is one size fits all. You'll either get an alert or you don't get an alert. If you don't ever have to worry about flooding, doesn't matter. You're going to get those alerts pushed to you. If you're in the middle of a hurricane and don't want tornado warnings, doesn't matter. You'll get those. You have to turn them off. And if you turn them off, then you lose everything else, not only weather-wise, but from the local emergency management. So if you've turned off because you're just sick and tired of getting those tornado warnings, and then they issue a hazmat, evacuate the area alert, you don't get that. So overwarning or using this, and again, those are reasons the system was made, and I don't want to downplay that. It's where we are today. But the issue comes in when we see places using that for not life-saving issues, and people turn it off for very good reasons sometimes. We've seen local emergency managers send out alerts to say that the polling place was closed because they ran out of ballots. That's probably not a life safety alert. We've seen test nuclear attacks, actually a nuclear power plant evacuation. It was an exercise. They weren't supposed to send it out that way because you don't send test messages. So they sent it out and said a nuclear attack is or a nuclear release has come. So that woke people up. We've seen it for closing the road for Main Street because there's going to be a parade today. Probably not things that are life sensitive. But again, it goes back to the lack of training. These are people that are told, hey, here's the message we need, put it out to the public, not realizing that, maybe once we'll forgive, but if you tell me this particular one, there was a power line across the street and they sent out 9 alerts because they kept changing the word, not realizing every time they edited it was a whole new alert. I think you get 9 alerts of a power pole down, you might be turning it off soon. So that's really where the issue. The Weather Service will look at, again, do we need to issue a tornado warning? They were also doing flash flood warnings at the same time. So the tornado warning gets low. The flash flood warning, you're supposed to get high, and you're in a hurricane. So again, that's looking at how does the public react to these things. But right now, it's simply it's just the uniqueness of our situation.
Wow, interesting. And you mentioned non-life-threatening situations. Look, I don't want to sound insensitive, and I realize if a child is abducted, it's very serious for the child. It may be life and death for that child, and it's very serious for the parents. But here in Tennessee, Tennessee is a state that takes 10 and a half hours to drive from one end to the other, from Memphis to Bristol. Maybe it's longer than that, but it's a long time. And it seems like every Sunday morning, about the time mom realizes that her kid's gone, and ex-daddy may have it, we get a statewide, Tennessee-wide child abduction emergency alert from Memphis. And Chris, you live in a place where there are several states close together. They all come together pretty close. And Memphis, Tennessee, you've got Arkansas across the river, and Mississippi just below that. And so you've got the whole state of Tennessee gets alerted for a child that was abducted. And I don't think Arkansas and Mississippi do. And frankly, if I was in Memphis and I was going to abduct a child, I probably wouldn't head across Tennessee. I'd probably head over to Arkansas or Mississippi. I'd like maybe either of you to comment on this. It just doesn't seem a very efficient use of the tools.
No, you're absolutely right. We have that issue here. We had an issue where Detroit, down in the southeast part of the state, someone had abducted a child headed southbound towards Toledo. They don't alert it in Ohio or Indiana because it's a statewide system. They did alert Alpena, 300 miles to the north, but they didn't alert Toledo, which was 50 miles to the south. Again, that's this isn't what we were trained to do. It's run in our state by the Michigan State Police. They never got training on communication practices. They have a book that says if we get an Amber Alert, we send it out. That's an issue sometimes because I understand the overnight needs, but if it's 2 a.m, I'm not going to see your car. I don't need you to wake me up at 2 a.m. to say, look out for this car, because I'm sleeping. And I understand why they do it. I totally do. I actually turned it off, and I tell there's an app that people that you can use that will send the Amber Alerts when you're awake only. It'll hold it till you're awake. But see, those are, again, just issues with here's what the policy says. We're going to do it by what the policy says, and if you have a problem, talk to the governor. I mean, something along those lines. So your state, your policy probably someone wrote in the vacuum, whenever there's an Amber Alert in Tennessee, we issue the whole state, which probably sounded good at first. but now everyone's cell phone gets that, and it's different. It's different when it was the old days when it went out of radio and TV and maybe message boards on the expressways. But now every cell phone gets it 24 hours a day, and I agree with you. I think that's an issue because I'm afraid too many people will be turning it off.
Chris?
Yeah, it's the boy who cried wolf. It comes down to, I say that the technology we have available now, you can be probably more granular, but it requires more of, how would you say it, society's thinking. As Rob points out, 2 o'clock in the morning, the local law enforcement goes by the protocol. It's time to rethink everything we're doing. We have the ability to be more smart about it, and we're not. It's like EAS. EAS is all well and good, but it's one size doesn't fit all anymore. And what do? As Rob pointed out, the Weather Service sends out dozens and dozens of reports because that's what they have to do. Meanwhile, it's going to an area that doesn't need it. People become numb to it, and now all of a sudden it's no longer part of the fabric of what we do. I think that's still one of the reasons why the EAS has always had a bit of an issue when it comes to broadcasters. It's not part of the fabric of what we do. It's sort of like it's a mandate. That's it. Deal with it and suck it up. I'm not trying to be rude, but that's the reality. If I was a programmer, the last thing I want to hear is those 3 letters and talk about my programming and interrupting it. That's why we need to rethink this and be more smart about it. And Rob pointed out, can't fault the guys who are implementing it. That's what they do. That's exactly what they have to do. And I get it. We need to just be bigger picture now. Things have gotten better. I got alerts on my phone quite often in the last couple of weeks from 2 states away. I'm like, what's going on? This is crazy. I'm on a subway at the moment. I'm on a subway platform. I'm getting an alert. And it's for a state it's part of a state over way farther than I will ever know. And I doubt very much the person's going to be abducting a child in Connecticut and running through Manhattan to get away. Just not going to happen. And if it does,
not likely. And
foolish
on the subway platform, you're not on the lookout for a late model brown Chevy 4-door.
That's true, but then again, this is New York City, so wait a minute, let me take that back. There's a good chance.
Hey, we got one more topic to cover, and Rob is really up on this and has some opinion, and that is this forecasting a continuum of environmental threats, and of course that makes into an acronym called FACETS. Rob, what is FACETS? And sounds good in some ways and a little tough to deal with in others.
Yeah, FACETS is right now. It's basically the warning system is binary. You either get a tornado warning or you don't get a tornado warning, and for many people that's the way it works. But tornado warnings are still often driven by county lines. So if you happen to be on the edge of a county line, you may not get a tornado warning with a lot of advance notice. If you're on the east side, you'll get that tornado warning 20 minutes ahead of time. And so what we've also found is, as I've said this several times, one size doesn't fit all. If you're home by yourself, you might need 1 minute of alerting system to get down into your basement, down in your crawl space, or whatever you need to do. If you're in a hospital, you need 20 to 30 minutes to get all the patients out. You got to stop surgeries. You got to push them into the hallway. You got to close the window or make sure doors are locked and windows are shut and all that nature. So the Weather Service is forward thinking in this area. I give them total credit for it. Is changing it to it's called a continuum. So instead of a box that we see now, you're either in the box or you're not in the box. It's kind of a roving blob, we'll call it. It's kind of like ovalish. I mean, they're usually ovalish. So as you get closer and closer to the storm, the percentages go up. Eventually, you're at a 90% chance of a tornado. That might be the trigger for the emergency manager to sound the sirens and set off the warning. But if you're a hospital that needs to know when there's just a 20% chance of a tornado, you get that information. The problem is we're kind of ending. Not yet, but when this happens, it'll kind of get rid of the binary on-off tornado warnings. It'll be that sliding scale, and eventually it passes a criteria that alerts you. But I have no idea how EAS would handle that. Cell phones can do that because in my spot, I'll see those numbers go up. Maybe I want it to alert me when it's at 40%. But on EAS, again, it's an on or off system, and I'm just not sure how radio broadcasting, how TV broadcasting is going to take that continuum and turn it into alert. Do you wait for a certain percentage? Do you not care about certain parts of your coverage area? I mean, there's just a lot of questions as to how that aspect. The meteorology side, we got that, but again, that gets back to the communication side. How are you going to incorporate something like that?
I don't know how it works everywhere else, but here in Middle Tennessee, where severe thunderstorms, hail, damaging winds, and tornadoes are all threats that we get, all summer long and into the fall a bit too. And I got to say, at my own home experience, that works pretty well. They issue those warnings and watches by polygon, and so it's not county by county. It'd be the southeastern part of Davidson County and the northern part of Williamson County and so forth. I mean, if you want to read the counties, but if you look at the polygon, it's pretty clear as to where it is. And the weather radio I have, the same code works fine. It alerts us for stuff that we're covered by and large. We get very few tornado warnings where I have to go look it up and tell my wife, no, it's not for us. Sorry, the radio went off. It's not for us. So that, to me, that works pretty well right now, except the Amber Alert. I too am wondering how this will be better from the alerting point of view, that the binary thing works as long as it's a small enough, a specific enough area. And to my way of thinking, it kind of is right now. So, Chris, any comment on that? Do you know if yours is done with polygons or county by county or what?
They try to do county by county, but I think what's happened more so in the last few years, I think people sort of take a judicious approach to the alerts, and they wait in some sense before alerting everyone for 20% or 30%. If you watch local forecasts on television, they're very quick to say, look, there's something on the horizon, but I wouldn't just take the umbrella with me today, or don't worry about this just yet. Some of the alerts for the radio side of things, again, the forecasters say the same thing for the radio reports. So I would say that there's probably a little bit of manual control being done. Do we still receive on our EAS decoders the National Weather Service stuff that's coming through? Absolutely, but you choose when to pass it on. It doesn't just automatically go out. So I would say there's some judicious thinking going on. It's keeping the not panic, but the overly the crying wolf scenario from appearing on a regular basis, because we do have some crazy weather that rolls through here. I mean, I know on Long Island, with the Long Island Sound being one set of temperatures, and then the south side of Long Island be another set of temperatures, and the average elevation across the island from east to west is about 300 to 400 feet. There's a nice mountain range, if you will. I remember working out there. You could have literally snow on the North Shore and rain on the South Shore. People would go crazy. And our weather guy, who was a meteorologist who worked with the National Weather Service at Upton, at the center there, it was wild. I'd go out to the Weather Service facility and sit and talk with the meteorologists, and they would explain the reasons. And, they show you the whole bit, and Rob knows what I'm talking about. And I'm like, are you kidding me? He goes, no, take a cross section. Here's what you got. It's like real simple. I'm like, whoa. And the same was true when I lived and worked in Connecticut. At the Long Island Sound, the south side of Connecticut, Stamford, Greenwich, Norwalk, Westport is down by the water level. But up north, Wilton and Danbury, it's a staircase, and the elevation climbs quickly. Same thing there. My studios were down in Stamford. I lived up in Wilton. Snow in Wilton, rain down by Stamford. I'm like, what is going on here? So I have to say, Rob's right. It's not going to be an easy solution or easy fix. We have to be probably more proactive as people reporting, people providing information, and decide which makes sense or not.
We've got a tip of the week coming up from both Rob and from Chris. But Rob, before we take another break here, I want to ask you, our audience is largely engineers, a few program directors, people who are interested in radio. What, as an emergency guy, what advice would you have for them to either participate or to go along and get along? What can radio broadcasters do, working with the limited tools and limited experience that a lot of emergency managers have, to make the system work as well as it can for the public? What are your ideas, if any?
Yeah, the first one is that we kind of mentioned before, get to know them. If you don't know your local emergency manager, give us a call. We'll be more than happy to have you down to the EOC or just to chat. But that's really that's step one. That's step one, to interact with us, and then also interact with the Weather Service. We've kind of been talking about this facets for a couple of years, and the response from the radio community has been okay. It might bother us, it might not bother us. Well, this is a revolutionary change, and maybe it's just something as simple as, okay, we set a limit, 70% is that binary on-off, but it's still a floating 70%. So do you want a new alert, EAS alert, every time 70% is hit somewhere in your coverage area? I mean, those discussions need to be had. And right now, as meteorologists, we're discussing it fine, and we're trying to include even some social scientists to help us with how does the public react. But the broadcast, the radio community specifically, has not chimed in a whole lot, at least from what we've seen or heard on how they'd like to see this move forward. And some of it has been the advertising part. Again, it's the Weather Service. Not everyone pays as much attention to the Weather Service as I do, but some of it we've kind of discussed it on some of these forums, and it's an, oh well, that's a few years off, and it is, but that's really why we want you part of the process. So I know they do go to some of the major national conferences. They'll set up a Weather Service booth, and they've even had some talks at NAB. So it's just something to make sure you're part of that process, because otherwise what you get might not be the best solution, just because as meteorologists, we don't know the radio side. We don't know the knobology of the radio stuff. And so that's where you come into play.
Gotcha. Hey, we're going to take our last break. Chris Tobin and Rob Dale will be right back with a tip for us, a tip we can take home and use, make our lives better. Our show, This Week in Radio Tech, episode 365, is brought to you in part by our friends at Lawo, Lawo. It's a German name, pronounced Lawo, but spelled LAWO.com. And if you go to their website, please add TWiRT, the acronym for our show, to your web URL. So lawo.com/TWiRT. Now, when you go there, you'll be taken right to the radio on air page at lawo.com/TWiRT. You'll see radio consoles. You'll also see Lawo's ideas for virtual radio, and been talking about that for some time here with their crystal clear console, where you can pick up the control surface, because it's a multi-touch touchscreen, and take it about anywhere. It's certainly within the same building, no problem, and you can control it remotely too if you want to. So that's the virtual radio, the crystal clear console from Lawo. But they have routing systems as well, using the Ravenna audio over IP standard that is AES 67 compatible. Also a virtual radio in the form of another product they have called Relay. And a Relay is, well, it's kind of a radio station that goes in your backpack. And it's a DSP engine and a laptop and a screen and a small computer, and you can have control of your automation system because it's built in. You can have mixing control right there, including auto mix and the various features that Lawo is famous for. And then there's the new console from Lawo. It's called the Ruby console. Now, they introduced this about a year ago at IBC 1 year ago, and it's cool because it gives you the standard surface, the hardware surface that you disc jockeys know how to use already, on-off buttons and faders and program assignments, and easy adjustment of gain if you need to do that. But if you want to go deeper into the console and set up the auto mix and set up various different things that are nuanced and important, well, the Ruby console has a touchscreen that lets you do that. It's just as cool as can be. Check out the Ruby console at lawo.com/TWiRT. Also, Lawo has just added SIP to the Relay virtual radio product. So SIP means that it acts as a SIP client. You can call from its codecs to other VoIP devices, other SIP devices. Doesn't have to be a phone. It can be a codec that's also talking SIP. SIP is just an amazing protocol. It opens up so many doors because of its automatic functionality. We're starting to use SIP a lot around our offices, and even codec to codec, and from one device driver to another device. It's part of the AES 67 standard, and it's really, really useful. So go to the website at Lawo. It's Lawo, LAWO.com/TWiRT, and check out what they're doing. By the way, their stuff is so reliable. They make big, expensive consoles for things like the World Cup, the BBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and NPR as well. NPR here in the U.S. loaded up with Lawo radio consoles. Thanks a lot, Lawo, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. I sure appreciate you helping us out and letting us help you out. All right, we got time for a couple of tips. And Rob, how about we check in with you first? Do you have a tip our guys can take home and use?
I did, and I added one after you talked about Amber Alerts. Hooks, Hooks, is the name of the app for both Apple and Android. It lets you set up Amber Alert notifications, but it honors your sleep and your mute button, and it also sends pictures. So instead of just that little 90 characters, you can get the full information right from Amber Alert. So that was my bonus tip. My main one was actually on Twitter, twitter.com/iPauseAlerts, IPAWS alerts. They also have a website that's linked there, but that's every non-weather emergency message issued across the country. So if you want to see what a local EOC has issued lately, most of it, of course, are test messages, but the real ones are in there as well. So you can see how it's being used. And again, for the most part, good, but you'll see those interesting ones in there every once in a while. But so that's twitter.com/iPauseAlerts.
Cool. All right. And I guess you could follow them on Twitter with at the symbol, iPauseAlerts.
Correct.
Probably.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Good take homes. Chris Tobin, what do you got for us this week?
Well, since we're talking EAS and emergency preparedness and things of that sort, it's probably about time for you to check the antennas on your facility, on the rooftop or wherever you have it for your EAS monitoring systems, and also your LAN connections for the iPause. From time to time, I've talked to folks who will call up and say, hey, I'm having an issue with blah, 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 not receiving something. And then they find out, oh, the AM loop antenna is no longer sitting on the rooftop. It's now sitting on the street. Or the FM antenna, or maybe the National Weather Service antenna they're using, whether it's a scanner antenna, whatever you choose. And it's just like, oh, that explains a lot. And then there's the iPause connection. Don't forget, you got to make sure the LAN connection's proper. Make sure it's static IP. Make sure the password is password protected. And, Lima is not a password to use. I'm just kidding earlier in the show. And talking to John Wu at Monroe Electronics for a DASDEC product, we were kidding about how sometimes people don't realize that putting their box on the internet is not a good thing. And then putting a password that's easily breakable, even worse. So, I know we talk about it. It's been mentioned dozens and dozens and dozens of times, but really, you got to make sure your stuff is properly done. So for EAS reception, make sure all your receivers are working as they should. Make sure they're on the right frequencies and for what you have to tune into. Make sure the antennas are securely mounted wherever you may have them, on the rooftop side of the side terrace or wherever the building, however you have it set up. And then make sure your LAN connections are proper. Don't assume anything, and label that LAN connector, that cable. Make sure you know where it goes back to which switch. Make sure the IP address is on the front panel. A few other things, because you know what? When it hits the fan and you've got to run around and figure something out, that label on the front of that device will be real handy when you go, oh, yeah, okay, I get to the web page right now. So you laugh, but I've worked with a few folks and been to a couple of training sessions. I've been to a few training sessions where we purposely pull the plug on things and watch people frantically run around and go, well, if you had the label like this box does, you'd already be in your web server.
It's not bad to either. Also, just label it as, the EAS box, so that when you send the disc jockey to go look at the rack, then, better chance of finding it. Hey, this has been enjoyable.
Put the password on the label.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, this has been enjoyable, and I knew the hour would fly by, and it sure has. Rob Dale, I want to thank you so much for being with us. It's been delightful and informative, and I'm glad to know there's experts like you out there that can talk to us.
I always like talking, and if I throw a little knobology your way, then it's mission accomplished.
Good deal. Chris Tobin, as always, thank you for being with us, and a great interview. I appreciate your help this week. Thanks.
No problem. Anytime. I mean, I'm all about meteorology. I love that stuff.
And thanks to our sponsors, the Telos Alliance at telosalliance.com, bswusa.com, that's Broadcast Supply Worldwide, and Lavo at lavo.com/TWiRT. All right. We got some good shows coming up for you in the future, but right now we're going to sign off. Oh, thanks to Suncast, our producer, always makes the show go well, smoothly, usually catches my good side. And also to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ Network, the producer of our podcast. Tell your friends about This Week in Radio Tech. We really appreciate it. We have thousands of downloads for every episode, and I appreciate every single one of them and appreciate you too. So thanks a lot. We will see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.